Okay, let's talk about this Rust case. The film Rust.
Yeah, there's been a verdict. The verdict is guilty against armor Hannah Gutierrez-Reed, who faces up to 18 months in prison, $5,000 fine for her part and death in the cinematographer by the name of Halyna Hutchinson.
Halyna Hutchins.
And this is the movie that Alec Baldwin, the famous actor, A-list actor, was an actor filming in New Mexico. And during the scene, my understanding is during the scene, he used a gun to point at the director or the cinematographer, and it went off.
Yeah, it's Halyna Hutchins. I just double checked it.
Okay.
Checked it. Sadly passed away.
Okay.
Yeah, she was the director of photography on the project. Independent film.
Okay.
I might have heard Alec Baldwin in an interview mention it was $5 million budget. That's a pretty low budget.
Very low. Yeah.
To shoot a Western.
Yeah.
But I guess it was a passion project for a lot of the people involved. He was a producer as well. And yeah, like you said, I guess what happened is for the scene, it's like they yell action. She's posted up with the camera. She's got the director right by her. And Alec Baldwin walks towards camera, points his gun right at camera. So essentially at Halyna Hutchins, sadly, who's shooting.
Which you're not supposed to do. We'll put a footnote in that. You're not supposed to point a gun directly. That's one of the allegations, that it was reckless for him to do that, even for an actor to do that.
Okay, I have thoughts on that.
Okay, we'll talk about that.
But he did point it at camera, which is seemingly what was required by the script. To me, having directed things and been a director, it's like you can't help but say that what is paramount is the story and the scene and what's called for in the scene. Like, what does the scene call for? Does it call for the gun to be looking right down the barrel of the lens of the camera? If it does, that's what you do, because you're a filmmaker and you do what's best for the film. So I don't begrudge Alec Baldwin in any way for aiming the gun where he aimed during the shot. I would just say during the shot. I kind of feel protective about that because it's like the creative expression of the filmmaker. You know what I mean? You could point anything at anything, but now we get to safety regulations and safety protocols. This is where it seems like there was a lot of problems, right? Like,
well, you don't have a problem with an actor pointing a gun. The problem is under the law and the ATF rules or procedure.
Yeah.
As soon as you pick up a gun, whether it's a prop gun or a real gun, you have a liability and a responsibility. And you're taught as an actor through the armor.
Yeah.
Somebody trains you at some point that there's a certain protocol. For example, you are to make sure the gun is cold. Cold meaning that it doesn't have any live bullets in there.
Yeah, 100%.
And the difference, just so you need to know the difference between what a real bullet looks like and what a live bullet or a live bullet looks like, or a dummy or a blank. There's a difference between a dummy and a blank, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So the dummy, my understanding is, has, I believe, BBs inside. And the blank has a little bit of gunpowder, but there's an indent on the projectile, which basically the blank is used in the scenes when you see like Tony Montana shooting and it's a big bam and it's a big powder. Well, that's the blank guns that they use for the special effects. And the dummies are the ones that go in a holster just so it fills up, the cowboys' holster with the bullets to make it as real as possible. And also when they're entering the bullet inside the gun with a close-up scene, because there's no indent, it makes it more real than the actual other type of bullet. So they use a dummy bullet for loading the gun, putting in a holster, and the blank bullet is used to discharge to make that bam sound.
Right.
A real bullet, the difference is a real bullet has gunpowder inside. That's why they were saying the armor in this case needed to inspect the actual the bullets inside the casings. I mean, just take a look at if you took a look at the bullets, you'll see the differences between a real bullet and a dummy bullet. And
Let's talk about that.
And an armor should have known that and should have checked it, but she didn't.
So the dummy bullets, as I understand it, there's certain compartments to a bullet.
Yes.
Essentially, we should be calling it a casing.
It's a casing with a primer.
Right. So there's a casing or a cartridge. Let's call it a cartridge, because the whole thing, when you look at a bullet in a movie and it's sitting on the table, you're like, what is that, a bullet?
Yeah.
That's actually a cartridge.
Right.
The cartridge has the tip, which is the projectile.
Right, and then let's think about it like a pinky. So say the pinky. The tip of the pinky is the projectile.
That's the projectile.
Right.
That's what kills you.
Right.
Behind that is some kind of powder, the ignition of some kind, the
Powder.
igniter.
You have actual powder.
An igniting agent of some kind.
Well, that's the gunpowder, and then you have the projectile in the back, the silver tip, where the gun hits.
The primer.
The hammer hits.
That's the primer, right? Yeah.
The primer's below the actual the actual casing, the gold. There's primer underneath.
Yeah. So you've got the entire cartridge.
Yeah.
Or what most people would call a bullet.
Right.
Holding it in your hand.
Right. The cartridge.
At the bottom of that is the primer. At the very, very tiny bottom, you got to turn it around, look at the bottom, and there's a primer there.
Yeah.
The primer is where the gun, I guess, hammer or part of the gun makes contact with.
Correct.
The primer does something to the gunpowder, like ignite it.
Yes.
The gunpowder explodes.
Yes.
Shoots the projectile towards somebody.
Yes.
Okay. We know that in this case, the armorer was surprised to learn that some of what she thought were dummy rounds were actually, some of the dummy rounds had actually been turned live. We'll get into who we think did that.
Which is not possible, by the way.
Unless somebody just does it.
No, but you can't do that. They showed at the trial, you could do the reverse. You could take powder out of a gun. You could dummy a real gun, but it's very hard to make a dummy into a real gun. You need the equipment.
Right.
And it's very hard. It's a long process.
Okay, let's talk about
It's
it. It's
not easy to do.
But in this case, we know that the armorer looked at a bunch of cartridges or bullets, some of which were legit dummies, and she handed to the actors and put in guns, and there were no problems with, but looks like at least 2, which came from another box, had become live. The question is, how did they become live? But those cartridges or bullets were live. It means they had everything in them they needed to do the process of igniting through the primer, blowing up the gunpowder, and shooting the projectile. We know sometimes they take these and they empty the middle part out. They empty the middle, the powder.
That becomes a dummy then.
Yeah, so you're taking what was a live round, which you and I could take to the range and shoot,
Right.
empty the middle portion out, the powder, and now you're left with the tip, which is the bullet, the projectile, and then a gap, and then the primer.
Yeah,
So
yes, but I think the whole point is that she wasn't doing this. She never said she did it. She never said she basically bought the box from another movie called The Old Way.
yeah,
Wasn't that with Nicolas Cage?
I don't know. But she got the box from somebody who provided firearms for the industry.
Okay, so let's just say right there that happened. So the argument in the closing statement with the prosecutor, she said as soon as she received any box, it's got to be scrutinized. It's got to be shaken. Each bullet's got to be examined.
Yeah, there's a rattle test that they do.
There's a rattle test?
Sometimes with some dummy rounds, they'll put a rattle inside so that a professional on set can easily go.
Right,
Oh,
and those are
that's
the
a dummy.
BBs. Those are the BBs in a dummy that I was talking about. So there's actual BBs.
They're not BBs you're firing. They're just for a rattle test.
Right.
Yeah.
So there's BBs inside them, and the blank has gunpowder, some other ignition, but it doesn't. The tip is gone. There's differences if you take a look at it. The pinky head is gone on the blank. It's almost like shattered. It's almost like a shattered front. It could still hurt you, by the way. It could actually still shoot if you're 5 feet away.
Do you remember Brandon Lee?
Well, he died.
Do you remember how?
I think that was a live round. Brandon Lee was a live round. There's 5 deaths. I think he was a live round death. The same exact thing happened to
So not exactly. I looked into it today.
Okay.
And what it was is, because I was fascinated by how that related to this case. And I'm not sure whether there were charges there.
No.
We could look it up.
No.
Okay. What happened in the Brandon Lee case specifically was, let's back up for a sec, because his dad is iconic Bruce Lee.
Right. He was shooting The Crow, the movie The Crow.
Brandon Lee, the son, was shooting the movie The
Right.
Crow. Bruce Lee had died years before from, I think, a brain injury or something. I'm not sure if a medical condition.
Or the Chinese ninjas that killed him because he revealed the kung fu secrets.
Was that Game of Death?
I don't know. That's the conspiracy that he was killed because
he died.
Exposed that kung fu that nobody knew about.
He died during.
Somebody put that live bullet in purposely.
Are you talking about Bruce Lee?
Bruce Lee, yeah. I'm just kidding. That's the theory. That's conspiracy theory. But
That's
anyway,
interesting.
And then Brandon Lee also died for similar conspiracy reasons. Anyway,
Bruce
I don't believe in any of that
Bruce
stuff.
Lee died during the filming of Game of Death, or in a gap during filming, because he was at that time contemplating coming to the U.S. and making a bigger budget movie. So he
wasn't entering the Dragon.
No, it was Game of Death.
Okay.
And then that's where he has the iconic yellow jacket. It's where he fights Kareem Abdul-Jabbar.
Yes.
This is Game of Death.
I remember
They
that.
never finished that with him because he died. He didn't die in any conspiracy. He just died of a medical condition.
Yes.
I think brain related. But after Bruce Lee, his son Brandon Lee. This is why people mythologize it a little bit, is because in the movie Game of Death, Bruce Lee's character was going to fake his own death.
Oh, is that right?
During the movie.
Okay.
That was just part of the storyline, is an actor fakes his own death to figure out who's catching him or something like that. Fast forward, Bruce Lee really does die, but it's from a natural cause. Fast forward, his son, Brandon Lee, is filming The Crow. During The Crow, Brandon Lee's shooting a scene where he walks into a room and finds his girlfriend being assaulted by a burglar or a bad guy. And I think the bad guy then points a gun at Brandon Lee, and this is on set. Everybody's around, director, sound guy. They're filming the scene. Brandon Lee comes in. The attacker points a gun at him, fires. It's loud. Brandon Lee falls back. He can't breathe well. He's fallen back. The director's like, is he faking it? Is he joking? There's not really any visible blood because I guess the projectile was so small and penetrated so deep. And within minutes, his pulse stops and he dies. What happened there? Here's what happened. They had a round which had the middle removed. It had the center gunpowder removed. It had the projectile there, which is the bullet, but no worries, there's no gunpowder behind it. It's effectively a dummy round. It still had the primer, though. What happened is, that one round went into the chamber and another round went behind it. So the first round fired, it was a dummy round, okay? Nothing wrong, he didn't die. But what happened is the primer dislodged the projectile. You following me? The tip of the bullet did not fire. There was no gunpowder. He didn't get shot. But the tip of the bullet dislodged and then fell into the chamber of the gun. Now, when they put the next one in, it also was a dummy round or a blank. I'm not completely clear on that distinction. But when that fired, it shot the projectile from the time before that was in the chamber. And it killed Brandon Lee. So at first I was like, did anything like that happen here? But you're correct to point out nothing like that happened here. Here, the armor, what was her name again? Hannah
Gutierrez-Reed.
Who's been convicted now?
Yes.
She actually just had a bunch of cartridges or bullets in front of her. She believed they were all dummy rounds. She honestly did. But she screwed up because she needed to either do the rattle test or where that wasn't available, turn them around and look at the primers. Because some primers were, I think, silver and some of them were gold. That's how they were distinguished on the set of Rust.
Well, it wasn't just screwing up. There's negligence and there's recklessness. She's being prosecuted because she was reckless. And she was reckless because she had 3 hours to check these bullets before the scene was shot. So what did she do for 3 hours? Nobody knows. And on top of all that, when Hutchins...
What do you mean? She has 3 hours? I mean,
she had 3 hours before the scene. She was on the set doing who knows what she was doing.
She's got 2 jobs also. That's a bit of an...
But she was doing mostly armor work, according to the assistant director. 90% armor work, 10% prop. So even though she was doing armor, she was only very little prop. And I know because the Hollywood is doing that now. They're mixing the prop and the armor together to save money, which is another issue. But the bottom line is she had 3 hours to get this done. And on top of all that, when the director died, the first thing that she did was she walked up to a witness and said, "Can you hold this?" And it was a bag of cocaine, apparently.
The director of photography.
Right. So she's getting rid of the coke. She's texting.
You're talking about now the armorer.
Halyna Reed Smith. Yeah. Halyna Reed Gutierrez.
After the fact.
And then she contacts her dad because she's confused about where the live bullet comes from. And she asks her dad, "Do you know where the box JS is?" JS was a box that came from her home.
Which should have been dummy rounds.
Which should have been, but it was mixed. She never checked. So it just shows she was absolutely, here's the thing, Tony. They testified, there was an expert that testified that basically the armor has a very simple job. All she has to do is shake the bullets, look at the bullets to make sure they're safe, number one. Number two, when you give over the gun, you make sure protocol is followed. Protocol meaning that the gun isn't pointed at anybody. If it is, it's part of the scene, only limited. You have the armor there at all times. The armor takes the gun immediately from you. And by the way, I disagree with Alec Baldwin. Alec Baldwin said, I didn't have a responsibility. They said it was a cold gun. I disagree. I think you're going to see for the first time that they're going to go after Hollywood actors that are just basically passing the buck on safety. Because if you give me a gun, regardless, right, if I'm pointing it at you, I think there may be a jury out there that might say, look, you should have just checked. You could have just took out the gun. You could have took a little, and I know you feel different about this.
No. Can I jump in for one sec?
Go ahead.
Anyone who's ever interacted with a gun or owned a gun, I own guns. You know that the first rule of gun safety is
never pointed at somebody.
Let's go with that because the top two are equally important. Never, ever pointed at someone.
Right.
I'm going to say there's a caveat there when,
right.
when you're in a movie
In the
or
movie,
a theatrical
that's what Alec
scene.
Baldwin.
I protect the right of the artist to do really anything.
Right.
I get it that it's risky and people get hurt. We have
Right.
to have safety regulations to try to prevent that. But anyway, never point the gun. Rule number 2, if you will. Always assume it's loaded. We probably swapped those.
Yes.
Always assume it's loaded,
Right.
even when it makes no sense. I was telling my kids the other day, we bought it's sitting behind me, a replica of the George Washington pistol, which he used during the Revolutionary War, during the real insurrection.
That's cool.
You pointed out that's a criminal artifact because it was treason at the time. Even though I know that I paid for that in a store and it's a replica, some part of me just understanding guns and just giving in to the first rule of gun safety is I assume it's loaded and I don't point at anyone. And I know it's a replica.
Right.
So I get how you can be extreme. Now, I don't want to sound holier than thou at all. When you're on a film set, it's so high pressure. It's so high time pressure. It's such high time pressure that I know that she just made this bad mistake of assuming these dummy rounds were actually dummy rounds. And you're right, she screwed up. Sometimes there was the rattle test she could have done, but other times I believe there wasn't a rattle on these other dummy rounds that somebody had made. Because we know that the armorer's dad, who's a veteran armorer himself or an expert of firearms in movies, he had a suspicion of who it might have been who made these dummy rounds.
Well, it doesn't matter. The bottom line is the buck stops with his daughter.
That's true.
So it doesn't matter. And
it doesn't matter.
And by the way, I think it's foolish to make a contention for the Alec Baldwin to say, well, we hired her because her father was the best. Would you hire a daughter of a surgeon?
No.
Just because
Never.
Because the daughter happens to have a very smart dad and therefore she must know surgery?
She'd have to be better than her dad at surgery and then I would hire her.
Right. So
I would.
The logic is the same. They hired her because her dad happened to be a famous armorer. That makes no sense. And by the way, this is her second job, only her second job.
Yeah.
And she was on Facebook with an interview on the first job saying that she really felt uncomfortable. She didn't think that she was up to it.
Yeah, I saw that.
And she was like, but I got through it, so I must be, qualified. That's not a qualification.
Right.
That lady, that girl, let's call her what it is.
She was almost
girl shouldn't be there.
She was destined to fail, you might argue, by somebody who put her in the wrong position, right? I'm not.
That's the
am I
question.
being too friendly to her?
No,
but because
no.
there is some empathy here that I have for this armorer who is not experienced enough. Does not. Yes, she should have turned these over and seen the back because the primer was different on these 2 rounds.
That's her exclusive job. Exclusively, you're hired to take a look at the bullets, and she didn't look at the bullets, period.
And I guess there's a mitigating factor here, at least to her guilt, in a sense.
What's the mitigating factor?
She was told that they were dummy rounds.
So what? That's her job. That's not a defense.
I know.
That's not a defense.
It's like pleading stupidity or ignorance.
Wait a second. Hold on. That's like my client giving me legal advice. And I say, well, my client told me so. It's my job to make the legal call. It's my job to make that determination.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter. See, that's what makes her inexperienced. By the fact that she said that, she actually blamed another director, Halls or something. Well, if he doesn't give an F, that's not my problem.
Who was it? The first assistant director?
I think so.
The first
Paul,
AD?
the one that pled guilty to negligence of a discharge. And
He took a plea deal.
And he did because they were discharging firearm, and he knew about that. But the bottom line is that this girl was not qualified, period. She was reckless. She shouldn't have been there. They were firing off firearms, giving a kid, Brady, one of the actors, Brady, a gun with the gun pointed at his face. If you take a look at the photos, he's got the shotgun pointing directly at his face. And he actually was smart enough to give it back to her because he felt uncomfortable.
Right.
And this was brought out during the closing argument by the prosecution that he was smart enough. And you know what's interesting? The prosecution brought out the fact. Listen to this, how crazy it was. She said there was a chance that Nick Cage could have got killed because these were live bullets that were on that filming of that set that were brought over to Rust.
What?
So this girl is just out of control, reckless.
Okay.
She should not be anywhere just because her daddy is the armor of the year or armor of the century doesn't make her qualified.
Right.
And I got a question for you. Who the hell hired her?
Yeah.
Because if it was Alec Baldwin, I'm going to tell you, there's two ways that actor is going down. He's either going to go down because he lied about shooting Hutchins. He clearly lied.
Yeah, well, let's talk about what
Yeah.
he said, because he just said that he did not pull the trigger.
Which is not true, and it's not possible according to the experts.
It's most likely impossible that he did not pull the trigger.
Right.
From what we've seen from reports and people doing demonstrations of the gun, that hammer cannot come back without the trigger being pulled.
And lastly, he made a false statement. He made a false statement because George Clooney critiqued him and Rob Schneider critiqued him. A lot of actors have come out and said, wait, we're actors too. We always check cold guns. We've been doing that for years. It's your response.
You're still going to pull the trigger in the shot, right?
You can't assume. You got to take a look at the bullet and go, okay, I took a look at it too before I blast this off, right? Just in case.
Right.
And basically Alec Baldwin's contention is no, that's not my problem. Good for you, George Clooney, that you're doing that, but that's not how I was taught. Which that's going to be a big part of the case, because if these actors, they get former actors to say that Alec Baldwin is wrong, he should have checked it, then he could be found guilty just on that. Or the other way he could be found guilty is if he was in charge of security and safety and he was cutting his budget and he was rushing people. I don't know if you saw, Tony.
Who do you mean by he?
Alec Baldwin. If he was rushing people and he skimped on that budget on the safety issue and he kept saying, well, I cut my own budget, I'm an actor. Well, it doesn't matter, Alec, because here's the bottom line. Safety is the most important thing on a set.
Right.
So you could cut everybody's budget. If you don't have the money for safety, you should not be doing that scene, period. So for Alec Baldwin to say, well, I didn't work the gun according to George, but I did the best that I can. That's not an excuse. He actually had an affirmative duty to check or to hire an armor that was,
I would say that
experienced.
The latter,
and
for sure.
If he didn't do both, then you know what? I'm going to tell you, I'm going to be bold and say Alec Baldwin's going to be found guilty.
Let's look at it reasonably, though. He has two roles. Let's look at him individually in both his roles. One is as an actor. He's in front of the camera. He's doing stuff.
Right.
He's not worried about anything other than his performance, and that's how it should be, right? And he's, in my book, when you're an actor in front of a camera and you're holding a gun, my opinion is if the camera's not rolling, you are not acting at that moment. That gun should be pointed down for the most part. Like you're preparing.
Was it rolling? Was the camera rolling at the time when he shot?
Yes.
So that means
Or
that
either that or he was rehearsing right before a shot.
he said he was rehearsing.
He might have been rehearsing, but that's like a live rehearsal. That's like you're.
So they are filming.
They may film, they may not. It depends on what kind of media they're using. Let's say it's like really expensive these days. 70 millimeter film or something. Maybe you'll say, "Let me not roll this. Let's do a non-rolling rehearsal. Let's block it out." But you might say at that point, just don't fire or.
Or you might 70 millimeter, a lot of money. We don't know what that means.
It's just a rarer form of celluloid to shoot on, but most likely they were shooting digital. And if you're shooting digital, high res, you got endless stuff.
Okay.
So you're going to roll on a rehearsal. So, and I don't know that it was a rehearsal or a live take. It doesn't really matter to me.
Right.
If you're an actor and you're doing what you do, you can point the gun. Other than that, you should probably never point a gun at anybody, and you should always assume it's loaded. Now, so how does Alec Baldwin, the actor, fare here legally? In my mind, he's probably fine. He did what he needed to do as an actor in the scene. As an actor, when a person of authority and safety comes to you and hands you the gun and says it's cold, you have to take that risk for that scene. I don't know, but I don't believe actors then take the gun and check the chamber themselves.
According to
I
George
don't
Clooney
believe
does.
so.
George Clooney said he does, and so
That almost feels-
Rob Schneider says he does. Is another actor on Dukes of Hazzard. He said he checked.
That's interesting.
And he's talking about like 17, 18, 20 years ago, maybe 30 years ago. There's a lot of actors
I
that have been
guess
coming out saying that we always check the guns.
Keanu Reeves would be the one to ask. He's probably
Yeah.
shot more guns
absolutely.
than anybody else.
I would love to know. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's an interesting question.
That's an issue for the jury. I want to know.
I would say most of the time the actor is not going to then redo the job of the armor and the first AD and rechecking the round. They might be in a position where they can't do that.
But
they might be hanging upside down in the scene.
But here's the thing. It wasn't just that he shot. It was, if you watch the other scenes, there's one scene where Alec Baldwin is shooting and is running away. He's a cowboy. And as soon as he gets on the ground, he stands up. When the scene is done, he goes, let's go again. And you hear Hannah Gutierrez-Reed saying, I need to do something. And he goes, no, let's keep going. He's like snapping his fingers. Let's go. We have like basically time pressure.
That if he truly pushed back on the armor.
I'm not saying it was that scene, but I'm saying like you see there was pressure on the armor to get, and she said, like Alec kept saying, we had a tight budget. We needed to meet the time deadline. And you were in the Hollywood industry. You know.
Well, I've been on a lot of sets and directed.
You know that could happen.
Yeah. I've never had as a director, I don't remember ever doing anything with guns, live guns or dummy, but we've done so many things that involve any kind of safety measure, and there's always slowing the crew down, actually bringing everything to a halt.
Okay.
Having a safety meeting. Everything's turned off, down, circle, safety meeting. Here's what we're about to do. Here are the potential risks. Here's a safety place to stand. Here's where you're less safe. Everybody be aware. Maybe it involved animals or it involved a stunt of some kind, even athletic stuff. Guns, I mean, of course, earlier in my career, I was working as a camera guy on a movie directed by Mark Klasfeld. Go out there and find it. The LA Riot Spectacular. Interesting, weird idea as Mark does. Genius that he is. But I was in the back seat filming, and there were actors in the front with guns, and we had live rounds. We had dummy rounds. No live rounds, just dummy rounds. But there was a lot of protocol taken into talking everybody through what's about to happen, making sure everybody's comfortable. It almost felt like when you sit on an airplane in the exit row and they come and ask you certain questions. Like I was being asked questions because I had proximity to the weapons. I was filming the thing from behind the actor. That was Emilio Estevez shooting a gun out a window. And the armorers on that project were very diligent, very kind of hardcore in slowing things down and really making sure everybody understands what's going on. So that little bit of perspective that I have into that process, when I read about what happened on Rust, there's constant problems that happen just within the culture of the crew. There's 2 misfires like that go off inside a cabin where Halyna Hutchins was, sadly as well. She didn't get hurt in that incident. But imagine you're the DP, the director of photography. I mean, your only job is to make an amazing movie. Just make it look great. Set up the angle. You're in a cabin. You're setting up the angle. The actors are doing their thing. And a gun goes off that's not supposed to.
That's a violation, right?
And then it happens again?
Right. And that's what that could make it criminal at that point because there was notice in law. There's something called notice. So Alec Baldwin can't say right now, or I'm not saying it's Alec Baldwin, whoever's in charge of hiring Hannah can't say, I didn't know. Because then they know on top of it. And whoever, now watch this. As soon as the discharge goes, if I was a lawyer, I would walk up and say, who is in charge here? Hannah Reed Smith, she's fired. She's fired today, right now, because that went off. That should not have happened. She let it happen. That's is effing fired.
That's a good call.
All right, and then I would get another armor on there, and I'd slow down the production. I'd talk to Alec Baldwin and say, this lady's got to go. She's going to get you into trouble. Do you understand me?
Right.
And that whole situation would have been avoided.
Let's play that out. The conversation probably goes something like this. What happened? We need a new armor. We can't get a new armor. We're shooting tomorrow. We can't fire her and bring somebody else. We're on schedule.
All right,
So then it's like, hey, I don't care. Shut it down. Find somebody new. Well, they're going to charge us twice what she's charging. I don't care.
All right, so
these are difficult conversations.
So you know what I would do? I would write a number on there. I'd write maybe $1 million and forward. I said, you have another $1 million, and Alec Baldwin would say, for what? I say, for my legal services. When somebody gets hurt and killed, that's what I'm going to charge you.
Right.
So isn't it better to delay this thing maybe a week or two? take another $100,000 hit, get the armor to come here. We do it safely. Because in retrospect, if you look at it right now, that's exactly what should have been done.
It's certainly better, but hindsight is 2020.
Of course.
It's really hard in that situation
but they gambled.
to assume it would actually happen again. Although sometimes I feel like the universe sends you signals.
But wait a second, hold on. Why is it so hard to understand? They just shot it to the floor. They discharged a firearm to the floor.
Twice.
Twice.
And then an explosive device went off unwarrantedly and unexpectedly as well. So I heard that report from a cameraman who quit, who said he has tetanitis. What is that thing? Tinnitus?
Yeah, from his ears ringing.
So, and not making light of it, but he seemed like he had a lot of complaints involving COVID, security.
Right. And he complained that there was safety issues. They're being rushed. He was a big complainer.
He was a big complainer.
But it doesn't mean the complaints weren't real.
One of his complaints was, aside from the 2 unauthorized discharges of firearms, an explosive device exploded, which nobody expected.
Right.
What?
Right.
How does that happen?
It was run roughshod. I think the whole thing was run really quickly. And when I saw Alec Baldwin, I didn't believe it at first, but when I saw him get up after a gun battle, shooting bump, 5-6 times, and he says, let's go. And then on the interview, in George Stephanopoulos' interview, I think he coaxed it and said, well, I was in a moment. You want to keep rolling because there's a time schedule.
That's real, man.
It is real.
That's real.
But when you're using a gun, that's a different story.
You should slow down.
You have to slow down. And the jury's going to decide whether or not Alec Baldwin stepped over the line by keep going.
Have you ever been on a production set?
Yes, okay. Only one time.
What was it?
My trailer.
Badass, dude.
Yeah,
awesome.
My trailer. We used the USC Film School, which was the George Lucas School, and the George Lucas and Steven Spielberg School.
Look, creative
We
people.
did a high.
No, I like
and we had 24 hours to get it done. We literally shot 24 hours straight, scene to scene. We had people calling us, you got to go to scene B, scene C. I get it.
Yeah.
But we didn't have guns.
So that's a school mentality, and I know film students, and I've been there in the early days when you're crawling your way up. So they understood the idea of getting a lot and not a lot of time. They certainly understood that. And in a professional crew on a professional set, bro, from 6:15 when you walk on set to whenever you leave, depending on regulations and union stuff and where you're shooting, every minute is accounted for. I mean, on a good production, and I've had some of the best line producers and executive producers running things for me, it's been so regimented. It's like you have like 11 minutes to go have a breakfast burrito. It'll probably take this long. You're going to eat that. Right. You better be thinking about setting up the next shot. Where I'm already pre-talking about the next shot.
Tony, they did that. U.S. Film School did that the same thing.
Okay, so the time pressure is real, and the sense of being on a mission is very real. And I can really understand Alec Baldwin being the big celebrity that he is, the big name that he is, the big face that he is. For him to go, okay, I'm not going to take a lethargic approach to this production. Like, let me know, I'll be in my trailer. But rather, I'm going to be hands on deck, rallying the troops. We got to go. We're losing light. Sun's going down. We need another shot. I 100% get that. I get his passion, his intensity, his eye on the clock, performing at the same time. It's pretty cool. It sucks that it led to a rushing situation and the safety people did not do their jobs. I kind of put it more on them. Now, take his hat off as an actor and put his hat on as a producer, because I know you want to do that, right?
What does a producer do? Let's just...
He's in charge. A producer's in charge of the movie. I mean, the producer is in charge of the line items of the movie. How many tables do we need? How many cameras? What kind of film? What kind of video? How about monitors? How many crew? Is it a 5+5 electric and grip? The producer goes through all the line items and makes sure that everything's correct. The executive producer kind of oversees that, also helps finance. I'm thinking Alec Baldwin was, and correct me if I'm wrong, he was probably mostly an executive producer because he's a celebrity. He's probably got a little bit of money in the project. He may not have, I don't know. But to what degree was he a boots on the ground in the trenches line producer who's like really sitting there going through paperwork and on the phone, like calling vendors and cutting deals? Is he that guy?
Who hired? I do know.
And also, who hired everybody?
I do already know.
It was one of the line producers.
No, it was the director.
or maybe the director's.
Joel Souza called Alec Baldwin and said, I have a really good, Joel Souza called about Hutchins, and then the armor.
That makes more sense.
The armor came from
the line producer.
From the line producer.
It has to be.
Yeah.
Because as a director.
But who hired a line producer?
The executive producers.
So that means ultimately Alec Baldwin would be responsible.
Yeah, if he's an executive producer.
That's why he's crapping his pants and doing these interviews, because he knows he's responsible. Otherwise, why the hell would he be on there?
Well, does he own the production company or one of that made this movie? Because I don't know. I would think. I mean, if I were him, I would. And I don't know if he did. But doesn't that open you up to a whole other line of liability just on... You're the owner of the company where somebody was killed.
The only way Alec Baldwin could be responsible is if he hired indirectly or directly Gutierrez-Reed. And then on top of all that, he has to have some sort of knowledge that she's not even qualified, which I could make the argument easily. She's never been on another set before.
She's not qualified enough, for sure.
Not even close.
Yeah.
And by the way, what about her marijuana smoking the night before she's smoking weed? Is she stoned on the set the next day? Is she hungover? And then she's got coke on her? Oof. Is she doing coke right before?
Stoned, running cartridges and bullets into guns as an armorer sounds pretty frightening and stressful. How paranoid would you be?
Why did they hire her? A 24-year-old with... Budget. That's wrong.
Budget.
That means, you know what? That to me is not only negligent, that could be reckless. I would hire somebody...
It had to be budget and availability.
Listen, if you don't have experience and you want to mow my lawn, that's fine. But if you want to grab my gun, I want to know how much gun experience do you have? Who did you have experience with? I want references. I want to see a few years underneath your belt. I'm not going to just hire you and just because you're cheap. And if I do, guess what? 12 people may require justice because of that. Does that make sense? There might be another Alec Baldwin law where they check. This might be the last time this ever happens. They might pass a Baldwin law where they say from now on, you have to have these contingencies and these protocols, and you've got to check the gun, right? You can't not check a gun before you shoot it. They might have that protocol.
What are we talking about when we say check the gun? Because, of course, we talked about rule number 1.
Checking the bullets.
Assume it's loaded.
Right.
Rule number 2, never point it at anybody you don't want to shoot. Rule number 3, check the barrel, right? Check the barrel for...
Or the cartridge.
Check... Is it the car? What do you... Chamber or barrel?
Yeah, if he's using a Glock, for example, right? Mm-hmm. I would just, right before the scene, pop it open, take a look at the bullets, show... And by the way, there was an expert that said you get a witness, which is the protocol. Did you know that?
No.
You get a witness. The actor's supposed to show the armor and have another witness and say, see? So 3 people are checking a go, thumbs up. You know, the bullets are good. And then you proceed. And the odds of anything happening are slim to none because somebody's going to catch it.
Right.
Nobody did that. And Hannah wasn't anywhere near the scene. She was outside. What the hell is she doing outside when they're using the guns? Why is somebody else handing the gun to Alec Baldwin in that scene?
It's the really bad look.
The number one job that she had to do, she wasn't there.
Right. That's really problematic.
That's almost like Michael Jackson hiring Conrad Murray to, administer the drugs to sleep, and then he goes to the bathroom, and then he comes back, and Michael Jackson is dead.
Oof, just
right. Same involuntary manslaughter. He was reckless. It's reckless.
You had one job.
You had one job. Watch Michael sleep. He didn't watch him sleep. He went to take a leak. Michael went to sleep, and then he went to Never Neverland.
Dude, this reminds me of a story. Have you ever had any issues with a gun in a negative way at all?
Pointed at me?
Yeah, well, here's what happened to me, and I was probably about 17 years old, and I went over to one of my best friend's homes, and he's like, let me show you my Magnum 44. Have you ever held a Magnum 44?
No, it's a big gun.
It's big. It's heavy. If you fire it at the range or whatever, it's got a kick like a mofo. He's like, I got to show you this, bro, Magnum. And this is my buddy he knows who he is, who's got a lot of camo in the closet. He's got like magazines about guns and
like
stuff.
Mercenary magazine.
Yeah. He's a little bit of a prepper.
Call for hire.
Even back then, and this is the 90s, but he's like, check this out, dude. And I'm not a gun fan at the time. I'm like just a scared little 17-year-old who knows nothing about guns and has never even really seen a gun probably up to that point, other than like from a distance at a party with some gangsters. I don't know. So I'm like, it's cool, man. Like, it's cool. He's like, you got to see it. You got to check this out. But just to be safe, check it out. I remember he took it out of a box in his closet, opened it up. Magnum 44. It's ginormous, dude. It looks like it would kill an elephant. Like he's like, look at it. I want to show you the chamber. It's empty, okay? As he's checking the chamber, boom! Thing goes off.
The gun went off?
Goes off.
The bullet, a live bullet went off.
It fires a bullet 4 inches from my ear. I don't even know what just happened. The last thing I heard was, okay, just to be safe, we're going to check the chamber and see, boom, thing fires.
That's what happened to Alec
I
Baldwin.
could not hear out of this ear for a half hour.
That's it? I'm surprised you didn't have permanent damage.
That's my memory of it. I could be
Wow.
wrong. Dude, I'm looking at him kind of pissed and in shock for a while. But then I'm like, okay, where's the bullet, right? So we check the closet behind his room. It's not in there. It went through. Check the bathroom, and it went through the tile into the shower, right through the mirror in the bathroom. If you were combing your hair in the bathroom,
I would have been dead.
You'd be gone. So how the hell did that thing fire? To this day, I literally absolutely have no clue what happened there. Was it that there was a bullet in the chamber he didn't know? Did he close it up wrong? Did it somehow, his finger hit the trigger? Well, I really don't know.
Alec Baldwin doesn't know either. Alec Baldwin supposedly doesn't know either.
We all believe Alec Baldwin when he says he didn't think there was a live round. I don't think any juror thinks that he wanted to kill Halyna Hutchins.
No.
I think that Alec Baldwin, the actor in the moment, was fully in his rights to assume that gun was unloaded when it was not. It was cold when it was handed to him, and therefore he went on to do his performance. Do you know how much focus it takes to do a performance? You got to shut out the camera crew. You got to ignore the fact that Halyna Hutchins is in front of you in a raincoat with a lens pointed at you, pulling focus, with like effects of smoke going around and people walking, the caterers you got to shut all that out and be in the moment as a cowboy in that year. And he's in character. He has all the rights to do that. Now, Alec Baldwin, the producer of the movie or executive producer of the movie, sitting in the C-suite looking through papers of who are we hiring? How much are we paying for an armor? Are they experienced enough? Are we safe? Are we cutting safety too much? I guess there's a question there, but it's so hard. He's an actor at the end of the day. Even when he's in the role of a producer, I feel like there's other people making those decisions.
So you hit the nail on the head, by the way. Those are the two exact issues. Tony, you hit the nail. So
which are they?
Number one, did he commit any type of involuntary manslaughter by pointing a gun at her? That's the first issue. Second issue is, did he commit involuntary manslaughter by hiring somebody reckless as Hannah Gutierrez-Reed? Those are the two issues. Now, as for the acting part, I don't know. I have to hear the experts. They got to get actors.
Yeah,
it might be split. I think it might be a hung jury on this one. They might hang it on this one. They might not be sure whether or not Alec had any responsibility. But the hiring, the prosecution's a little bit more confident.
You mean for pointing the gun?
Yeah.
At Halyna Hutchins, the camera?
I don't know if they'll find him guilty on that.
You can't.
Tony, you never see. You can't. You never know.
No, I know that it could happen because people can make crazy decisions, but
the jury might say, "Hey, listen, it doesn't take that long for you to take a look at the bullets." They might not listen.
They don't know.
Tony, you're Tony Hollywood, but regular Joe Santa Fe might not give a crap.
I'm definitely not Hollywood. Okay. Not trying to be that Hollywood either. But
I'm just saying, like, they might not care about you're in the moment and you're an actor and you're focused and you've got tunnel vision and you need to be that character. They might not care. They might like, so what? This person is dead. That's your problem. You figure out a way to check the bullets and be in the moment.
Right. But I mean, how many actors are told to do something by a director and they do it?
That's going to stop. That's the old way.
You can't stop that. It's filmmaking. That's creativity. That's artistic
with
expression.
Guns now, I don't think this is going to happen again.
Sure, you could CG every gun from here on out. You could have them hold just a handle without a barrel.
Why don't they do that? Why are they using real guns anyway? I don't get that.
They could probably use a TikTok filter to motion track a barrel onto that gun. Fully photoreal. You don't even need an effects.
Why are they using real guns?
For authenticity. It's like an 1883 model revolver.
But you just
Colt 45.
CGI, AI. Why are they using that? Oh, it's a low budget. That's why.
Well, it's a low budget. It's like if you had to take my hand right now.
Right. It's a low budget.
Sure. Put in a Colt 45.
Cheaper to get an armor to give it to you for from a garage.
If our show was big enough, I'd say, hey, some kid out there, put one in my hand right now. And they totally could.
Well, you know what? But sometimes when you have a low budget, things happen. Things slip through the cracks, and then this person dies. You're right on the Brandon Lee. He died with that projectile, but this could have been avoided. That could have been avoided too, in a way. But this could have definitely been avoided.
Either through the rattle test or through looking at the primers and making sure the silver ones and the gold ones were distinguished. That was her job to do that. Now, Did she somehow not know about that? If she didn't know about that,
of course she did. She didn't take the stand. You know why? Because she would have been crucified on the stand. They would have
she
said,
would have.
Didn't you know about this? Didn't you know about that? And the more she says, I don't know, or, I didn't do it. Either way, she's checkmated. I mean, she was not going to win this case. I mean, she didn't have a choice. I mean, this was reckless, and they were going to use her as a statement to make a statement to Hollywood in the future. Look, enough is enough. And by the way, this is not the first or the last time. Do you remember the Twilight Zone? The same thing happened during the Twilight Zone, where
the helicopter crash.
And it felt, I think the director was Victor Morrow. They prosecuted him.
I don't remember who the director was.
Yeah,
Okay.
it was. You know how I know that? Because his daughter was on one of my jury trials in a murder case, and she said my father was being persecuted because he was a Hollywood director. And I looked at her. I was
it's not even, but I mean, it's really not the director's call to make
That's why he was found not guilty.
Yeah, no, it's absolutely true, because it's actually a really cool, I would say, division of labor and a division of roles on a movie set or on any kind of production set, which is you give the director full creative control to dream, to express, to try crazy shit, to say, bring me 3 helicopters and float them.
That's what they did. It was an accident.
Well, he dreams, or she dreams, the director dreams. But the assistant director, many people don't know that, a lot of the time, actually I'd say almost all of the time in production, the safety of the set rests with the AD, the assistant director. Some people think when they hear assistant director that the person's getting coffee for the director. Furthest thing from the truth. The assistant director, the AD, is the boss of the set, the boss. You come in as the director, you're like, what are we doing? Where am I going? You're here, we're shooting at 11, kids are coming out, we're about to do the scene. Great, you go do it. But the AD is running the schedule, and the AD is running safety. So if you're about to do a scene and you're the director of the Twilight Zone and you dream up this helicopter sequence, the AD has to kind of go the unenviable position of telling a director, we're not doing this. We're not going to do it. Do you know how hard that is to tell a big Hollywood director?
What?
The AD is tasked with the responsibility of shutting it down if it gets unsafe by their judgment.
So why didn't the AD do it on this set of Rust?
It's a very good question, but that AD took a plea deal. So we'll never know. But just know that AD had huge responsibility.
Okay.
You're in charge. You should have a safety meeting at any moment when something unsafe is about to happen. And you know what? I've been guilty of it. Like, what do you think my thoughts are, just being purely honest, if we're in the middle of something and I'm looking at the shot list and I'm looking at the schedule and my producer's going like this and I'm looking at the daylight and then the AD's like, I need to do a 15-minute safety meeting. You're not happy about that as a director because your primary goal is the creative expression. You're trying to get through the day. You're trying to get 11 more shots. But you do have to go, cool, absolutely.
So why can't the director say cool and then go do something productive?
Well, you
so
can't.
He doesn't waste time.
You can't. I mean, everything
so
comes
then
to
wait.
a halt.
That's part of the
everything comes to a halt. You shut up, you fold your arms, and you wait for the safety meeting.
Wait.
Guess what? You even listen to the safety meeting because it's important.
So,
because God forbid,
Alec Baldwin should have done that. He would have avoided that had he done that.
So I don't know that there should have been a safety meeting at the moment this shooting happened. Here's why. They had multiple gunshot scenes throughout this movie. Presumably they had done hundreds of shots with guns. So you don't really do maybe a safety meeting on every single one of those like it's the first time people are hearing about it. You probably refresh the safety concerns, but you know that you're on a set with guns. Almost every scene has guns in it. It's a Western.
Yeah, but the whole script flips, as they say, when you discharge a firearm on a set of Hollywood twice.
Oof. Yeah.
Not just once, twice. So what happens is this set should have been stopped. ATF could have got involved with that, by the way. I mean, it could have been a crime, discharge. Because it's not a part of a scene. It's not a part of the art. So it is a crime to discharge a firearm if it's not being done for a purpose. They get a permit for that, by the way. I researched this. You need to get a permit from the ATF. You need to get all these permits.
Yeah.
You need to tell them what the movie's about, what scenes you're going to be shooting,
right?
All this stuff. And that's not a part of the scene to shoot inside the sand by accident.
Right.
So that should have been right there a flag.
100%.
And whoever ignored that. So at that point, let's just say if Alec Baldwin didn't know, nobody knew. then at that point, in my opinion, as a lawyer, the show stops. They should
should
have said,
have.
what the F just happened?
Yeah.
And then crawl up the chain and then fire that person that was responsible that happened for that.
Yeah.
Then turn around to Alec in production and say, this is being shut down right now. By the way, the insurance company would definitely tell you that. They're insuring the whole movie production.
Right.
The insurance company, if they found out about it, they would have shut it down.
Do you think there's an incentive by the producers to not let the insurance company find out
Well,
about
that's
it?
what we're going to find out. That's what the trial is about. What were they doing? Were they hiding this? Were they trying to get it, keep going to stay under budget? Were they trying to hide it from insurance? I don't know.
If you're the producer of that movie and there's an inadvertent accidental firearm that goes off in the cabin, I think you're like, is everybody okay? Everybody's okay. All right. I'm not sure your very next phone call is to the insurance company.
No, but wouldn't you be very pissed and say, listen, you bastards, you're this close to shutting down this production. I'm supposed to technically call this into insurance. You guys should all be fired. There should be a riot act.
Somebody should have.
Somebody's head should have rolled right after that.
Yeah.
Somebody should have got fired.
Yeah.
So
let's assume Alec Baldwin heard about these two misfires.
yeah. And by the way, the prop person could handle the armor position because apparently the prop person did have some skills as being the armor because they were doing both hybrid positions.
Right.
So they could have easily fired Hannah Gutierrez-Reed and then had the assistant director continue, or Hall, whoever was doing it. They could have continued just to finish the film.
Maybe. I think you need an actual armor. But let's assume Alec Baldwin knows. He knows that in the cabin there were two accidental gunshots that went off.
Okay. If he knows.
You're the lawyer. He knows that.
If he knows, yeah.
Let's say he knows.
Okay.
In that world, he's screwed.
No, well, if he knows, so the argument would be, I'm going to play both sides, right? The prosecution's going to argue, then Alec Baldwin should have been on high alert that something is happening that's bad. That when they gave him a gun, he should have said to himself, listen, 30 seconds before, which is not a lot of time to ask, because that's how much it takes. I think it takes, she said it takes, during the closing argument, 6 seconds to shake a bullet and listen to it. You have, I don't know how many bullets, say it's 60 seconds. Who doesn't have 60 seconds to check before a scene for safety, right?
Well, he's not Alec Baldwin, the actor, because he's in the role. Like I said before, he's getting the gun passed to him by the armor, by the AD. They're saying it's cold. It's
No,
cold.
not Alec Baldwin.
Not that Alec Baldwin.
No,
but the Alec Baldwin, the producer or the
Yes.
executive producer,
Now that he has notice,
he should fire her.
and by the way, Alec Baldwin, you can't parse the actor with the executive producer. He is one.
He's one.
He's one.
So in either role, if he's guilty, I'm just kind of justifying a lot of his role as the actor in the moment, pointing the gun.
The actor himself, maybe if he was just an actor, he had nothing to do with hiring. That I would say,
because that's the person
that would be negligence for sure. Would it be reckless criminal? I don't think so, but for sure it would be negligence, some sort of maybe even criminal negligence, which is what he's getting charged
for
with.
The actor to point the gun at the camera can't be negligence. He's
criminal negligence.
But he's doing it in his role as an actor, as the script requires.
Good point. I mean, that would be the defense that the script required him to do that, but that's why I don't think he would get caught with that. But now, as the executive producer, now you're adding a huge
This
fact.
is big. If he knew.
And then add to the mathematical equation, let's do math on this, add 2 extra shots that happened on the scene, that changes everything. Now you heard 2 bullets going off, you're the executive producer, and you got the gun in your hands?
Yeah.
Alec Baldwin, don't you think for a second, whoa, let me just check these bullets just in case.
Yeah.
I got 30 seconds on my hand.
Yeah.
And I get it later on, he's all pumped up during the scene. He's like, let's go, let's go. When you're in a scene, I get you. I understand what you're saying. But how about before the scene starts? Why can't he just check the bullet before it starts?
Yeah. What about if he didn't know?
That changes things. If he didn't know.
If he didn't know there were 2 prior gunshots.
Then it's a weaker case, because then I would say, like what you said, as an actor, as his defense attorney, I would say, how was he supposed to know? He's been acting for 40 years. He's done a lot of movies with Anthony Hopkins and all these pointing guns. But here's the thing, though.
He wasn't in the cabin, from what I understand.
Which cabin?
Where the 2 gunshots went off inadvertently. I don't believe Alec Baldwin
But as long as he knew
cabin.
about it, if he had notice, if as an executive producer.
So if you're one of the people who were in that cabin, and if you're one of the producers who knew about it, do you think they would go tell their celebrity executive producer and star Alec Baldwin what just happened? Or do you think they would hide that?
No, they would hide that. And that would be defense for Alec, because Alec would probably get pissed. And apparently he's a big drama guy on the set. He's yelling at people, and he's a really stressed out guy. He doesn't want to hear that. He doesn't want to hear that.
They might have hid that from him.
100%. I believe they hid it from him.
Yeah.
But, that's going to be, again, I'm speculating based on the fact that Everybody said that he was a really stressed out guy because he had a $5 million budget. And he was yelling at people, let's go, let's go. So I doubt they would tell him, by the way, 2 guns went off. He would really freak out.
Oh, he would. Yeah, I would imagine.
Yeah.
But you know who I think definitely knew that happened and must have known that happened was the first AD.
Yeah.
Because he would have been there during that shot
Absolutely,
because he's there during every
Yeah.
shot. Halyna Hutchins knew too. She was in the room.
Yes, but remember, she was new to the game. She may not have wanted to rock the boat. She may thought that was under control. She was just, for all intents
She
and
was
purposes,
also,
she was a rookie.
bless her heart, she was getting a massive, I would imagine, a nice creative break.
Huge exposure.
Shooting this movie with Alec Baldwin.
100%. It could have been a break. It could have been the stepping stone to a career.
Right. So she probably didn't want to rock the boat too
No.
much. But I mean, for sure, I'm going to have to go out on a limb and guess. People complained to the person who was in charge, which was the first AD. That's who you complain to on a set when it's not safe.
AD, so just the audience
first
knows.
AD,
The audience knows, the assistant director, right?
First assistant director, the security officer of that set. You go and you say, dude, this just happened. This is not cool. And then probably they say, got it, noted, 100%. Yes, we're going to do something. And I don't know if they did anything about that. Because the next bad thing that went off was the gun that killed Halyna Hutchins. So,
you know what they could do, in my opinion. The movie industry is going to hate me for doing this, but screw it. I'm going to give some advice how you could avoid it. So, do you know what a stock market compliance officer is?
No.
You know, there's a compliance officer in every brokerage firm, a kind of cop that watches. He just stands there like a security guard and makes sure everything is goods, kosher, security above board.
They're sort of like almost like your liaison to the Securities and Exchange Commission, but they still work for you.
Yeah.
Or either they're in-house or they're independent.
They're independent.
Sometimes,
so the ATF should, on every movie set, require Hollywood to post a bond. And part of that bond, you get a compliance officer to literally just stand there and watch the whole thing.
I mean, that's a great idea.
And that would never happen. This would never happen again. That's a boring job, okay? But you get to see actors and you get to watch people shooting and stuff. But you just literally stand there and watch. And as soon as Hannah leaves, you report it. You're like, you can't do it. I'm gonna call it in right now. You're gonna get violated. You can't do it. And maybe either give them a flag warning. The compliance officer says you can't leave, or you shut it down. Just like a stock compliance officer, if you're doing anything ethical, they'll report you to the Securities Exchange Commission.
Right.
Just like on the airplane, you have an undercover agent now from the TSA, right? I'm sorry, not the TSA, the Homeland Security. There's always somebody in a plane just in case there's a terrorist hijacking. Wow. You have somebody in Hollywood.
Is that every
just
flight?
in case?
Is that actually every
Since
single
9/11
flight?
Patriot Act. Yeah, you're paying for it, by the way. Yeah.
Dude, I'll pay for that.
You are. You're paying for it through your taxes. The Patriot Act, that's included. Every flight there.
Happily pay for that.
Well, what do you think? Every time there's somebody stands up and say bomb, there's an agent. By the way, one of my clients was a Homeland Security agent.
Okay.
She was being accused of domestic violence, so she hired me because she was going to lose her gun, and she told me she was on a flight. I asked her, "What do you do?" And she said, "I just stay on the flight." And she went back and forth from Vegas. They all have places like their flight locations, their flight schedules.
Right.
So rest assured, America, there's somebody always on your flight for terrorism purposes.
That's pretty cool.
So you should have that for Hollywood. If we have it for airplanes, why can't we have it for Hollywood?
We do have sort of a rule where it's like if there's young people on set, like children, adolescents,
they didn't have it for Brady. Brady was a young kid. He was on a set pointing a shotgun to his face.
Oh, you mean for guns? Yeah. No, I was just gonna say like you're required to have a teacher on set.
Oh, okay.
The teacher kind of watches how many hours you work the kid. You can they regulate what you can do and
child labor laws.
Yeah, child labor laws, and then the kid has to go into like a side room and actually study for some time. Literally go through educational.
Where's the child safety laws? This kid Brady was an actor in the movie with. He was supposed to be the son, I think, of Rust, the old man. Okay. By the way, for those who are listening, Rust is basically about an old Western guy, an outlaw that goes into the middle of nowhere with his grandson. So Brady's the kid, but Brady's there's a picture of Hannah Gutierrez-Reed handing a shotgun, and the barrel's pointing at his face.
Oh, no.
I mean, clearly at his face. And there's another scene where somebody's pointing a shotgun in the direction of, I think, the assistant director or Joel Souza. I'm just saying this whole thing was just horrible. It was a crap show.
It's there's good gun safety and all the measures we talked about, which everybody should always have in mind, but that's colliding with the crazy high pressure work environment of a production set and time and money and also guns in every scene that have to be used. It's a weird collision because in daily life, you're not walking around your house with a gun and just pointing it around. Like, it's just not part of you don't have that many guns around you all the time. But like in this set, you just did. And yeah, I don't know. Terrible. I mean, she got convicted. We know that.
Yeah.
So
she's getting 15 to life.
Wait.
Like
Whoa. Really? I didn't realize it was anything that serious. Because is it like she got convicted of gross negligence, right? Or just negligence? Is it negligent manslaughter?
Involuntary manslaughter. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. You're right. Involuntary. She's looking up to 18 months. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
We were going to talk about the other case.
We're going to do another one. But this one, because that's a little bit of a miscarriage of justice, I would say.
That was 15 years. Sorry. The other one's 15 and 15, 30 to life. Sorry, I got confused.
Okay, so
this is up to 18 months. They did take her into custody.
How do you feel about that?
Well, it doesn't look good if she just walked out of there. The optics would look terrible. Well, how would that look? You
can't.
You got a young white female walking out of court. I mean, come on. That doesn't look right.
It's not a race thing.
No, but the optics are important because I have clients and I represent minority clients that mention these things to me. You know, why is it that certain cultural demographics get a break and we don't? I represent the minority.
Yeah, I hear you.
So I'm telling you, it's not, the optics look bad. If my client saw this, you know, they would be like, oh, look, if you know, for example, if she's getting off and I don't get off, it looks bad. If you're looking at the same type of charges.
I understand.
And it's not just a culture thing. It's a socioeconomic thing, by the way.
It's more so. So I would like to think a socioeconomic.
But the socioeconomic has a direct correlation to certain types of demographic. Does that make sense?
There's correlations, 100%. 100%.
So that's all I'm mentioning. Obviously,
if and I didn't mean to insinuate that she should have gotten no time and walked out. Right. I was wondering if you thought that was enough time.
Well,
your opinion,
was she sentenced yet?
She hasn't been sentenced yet?
I think she's looking up to 18 months. They remanded her into custody. Her sentencing is going to be set in the future.
I got you. So she got remanded into custody.
So that's what I'm talking about.
She was carried out.
Just so you clear up, when you said, it's not a race thing, I'm saying if they typically take you into custody when you're found guilty of a serious crime. That's not a race thing. They do. White, black, Chinese, purple, black.
They should.
They do.
Yeah.
If they let her go,
it would have been bad.
It would have looked bad. Yeah. It would have looked horrible. Like, why the hell is she getting off? I'm just telling like it is. It would have made sense.
But they didn't, and I don't think
that was right call.
I don't think they had planned to.
But see, Alec Baldwin is different. Because I'll tell you why. Because if he's found guilty, I think he's probation eligible because his actions are a little bit more attenuated. Do you know what I mean by that? It's a little bit stretched out.
He's
distant.
He's further distant from the crime.
Yes.
Even though he's the man that pulled the trigger, because that was the actor.
Because it wasn't.
We're talking about the producer.
He didn't put the bullets in there.
He didn't put the bullets in there. It wasn't his job to sort through the dummy rounds and find the primers and check the gold versus silver.
Right.
Or do a rattle test.
Oh, and if let's just say he hired her, negligent hiring, maybe it's really reckless.
Is that a thing, negligent hiring?
Well, that's a civil thing. He's going to get sued for that for sure.
Yeah.
I know that for a fact. As far as a criminal negligence is concerned, when you hire somebody, I'm sorry, not criminal negligence, excuse me. He's going to be found criminally liable because they're going to say that you knew or should have known that at the time when the bullets went off, remember the 2 rounds? That's when you should have fired.
The accidental
rounds
in the cabin.
Yeah, that's going to be
which we talked about. We're not sure if that news ever made its way to Alec Baldwin.
Made it to Alec Baldwin. Yep. They have to connect it. Otherwise, how is Alec Baldwin going to be held liable? It's too thin of a string, like you said, to say, well, you're an actor. You should have checked the cold gun.
No.
Maybe. No, I'm going to disagree with you. You and I are going to agree to disagree.
Yeah.
It's a 50-50 split. You're going to vote no. I'm going to vote maybe. I don't know. I need to hear more from the experts on this,
Right.
But
you can imagine scenarios that an actor's in where one of their hands is tied behind their back and they're in a scene and they have no way of checking the barrel. They do have to rely on the armor to hand them a weapon.
I understood.
Maybe they're missing an arm. Lieutenant Dan was he missing a leg or an arm? Legs.
Forrest Gump.
2 legs. An actor missing an arm would not adequately be able to cock back.
I understand.
I understand. So we have to think about those crazy exceptions when making these rules. You got to leave actors free to do what they do.
Well, that's
if you
why
hand them something, they have to be able to rely on you in the scene.
And the only way you're going to make this work smoothly, in my opinion, is you need a compliance officer. Otherwise, you're going to run into this issue every single time. Studio's going to get shut down. You know what it is? It's a little bit of a tax to the movie studios in advance. Like it increases the budget. Yeah. But what's it going to cost for 4 weeks? Let's do the math. Like let's just say it's security guard money, right? Let's just call them
I don't know, $50 an hour.
$50 an hour,
maybe
40 hours
100
a week. So $2,000 a week times 4, $8,000. Wow, that's pretty fast. See that? I went to law school.
Yeah.
So that's $8,000 right there. So 8,000, say 10.
You're talking about 4 weeks?
Say 10. Say $10,000.
How many weeks are you talking?
4 weeks. To have somebody there watching it.
It's a long shoot.
So okay, let's double it. Double it. Yeah. Say 20,000 in a $5 million budget. 20,000 to put aside extra. Let's say it's 5 million and 20,000. That's what's going to cost. That's the mentality you have to have in your brain. We're going to pay an extra 20,000 to make sure nothing happens. Yeah. Only on sets with guns, pyrotechnics, anything dangerous. You need a compliance, security, safety officer.
It's a great idea.
And they should call it the Hutchins Act. Honestly, the federal government should pass it and call it the Hutchins Act.
That's a cool idea.
Yeah. I would propose that, and I would make, and nobody would ever die again. And how nice would that be in her memory?
Sounds amazing.
How nice would that be if nobody ever died in her name again because of her?
Wow.
And they should champion that immediately.
I love that idea.
Yeah.
Dude, that is great. I hope somebody takes you up on that. I hope somebody does that. Make that happen, people. And find the way to do it cost effectively. Maybe it's not an actual separate compliance officer. Maybe that's merged with the armorer. Maybe the armorer needs to get certified as a compliance officer.
Maybe the armorer gets trained from TSA.
Yeah, they need to
tobacco, tobacco, firearm, and alcohol. TFA. I said TSA. Tobacco firearms.
So this person, the armorer, should be a certified expert in compliance.
Yes.
That's it.
Yeah, like totally certified.
Pay him more.
Government.
Pay him more.
Not like this young girl with her blonde purple hair and dressed like she just was shoveling somebody's sidewalk outside, you know?
Right. There's a casual sort of like almost disregard for the job, or like
I don't feel comfortable with somebody like that.
an irreverent attitude almost to that.
I want to see a guy in a suit and a badge that's just watching me like a hawk. That's who I want.
The caveat being, it is the business, and people do dress funky, and people do like to stand out.
But wouldn't you feel better with the guy that's not funky in a corner, where everybody would point and say, "That's the safety compliance officer."
Just
he's here to make sure nobody gets hurt.
An Agent Smith from the Matrix.
Yeah. You have one Agent Smith on every.
Just the most boring person on set.
That's right.
Yeah, it's just like,
that's right. Most boring, like a Secret Service agent, just there to make sure the president doesn't die.
It's a cool idea. All right. Should we wrap this up on that note?
Yes, sir.